Welcome to episode 24 of Leaders of Enchantment podcast. In today's episode, we are returning to a common theme here on the podcast, which is the University of New Mexico, and more specifically, the university's athletic department, a subject I don't believe we've touched on since my interview with our former men's basketball coach, Richard Pitino, from last year. Today's podcast guest is none other than UNM's new-ish athletic director, Fernando Lovo, otherwise known as Fern. I've had the distinct pleasure of a front row seat watching Fern quickly grow into his new role here in Albuquerque. I say quickly because it's been a bit of a trial by fire for Fern, where I believe only a week into the job, he had to go looking for a new football coach after Bronco Mendenhall, who I also interviewed last year, left UNM for Utah State. 3 months later, he was back in the same boat after Richard Pitino left UNM for the head coaching job at Xavier. So with a mere 6 months under his belt here at UNM, I think it's fair to say Fern is now a seasoned veteran of what is the roller coaster of today's ever-changing collegiate athletics world. I had an early look at Fern as I was part of the university search committee for our next athletic director after our previous athletic director, Eddie Nunez, departed late last summer for the same position at the University of Houston. Fern was quite impressive during his interview process with our committee, and I was not at all surprised when President Stokes announced him as her choice for UNM's next athletic director. To say that Fern is impressive is an understatement. Despite his relative youth, he brings a wealth of experience with previous stops at the University of Florida, the Ohio State University, University of Houston, University of Texas, that small school in Austin, and even the NFL. So that's it for spoilers. You'll have to give a listen to the full interview to get the full skinny on Fern. Enjoy. Fernando Lovo, otherwise known as Fern. Welcome to Leaders of Enchantment podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Fern, what's your role today? What's your quote-unquote day job?
My day job is I am the Vice President and Director of Athletics at the wonderful flagship institution of the great state of New Mexico, the University of New Mexico. At night, I'm a part-time dad and a part-time husband. I think my wife and kids would agree with that, but just so happy to be here and absolutely love Albuquerque and everything so far. So that's my day job.
Okay. Well, it's lovely to have you. We're lucky to have you. And so obviously your journey to New Mexico is quite obvious. I know exactly how you got here. But where are you originally from?
So I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
I was born there. I lived there till I was about 5 years old.
Okay.
My dad got a job in Miami, Florida. So we packed up and we drove 24 hours to Miami. So grew up in South Florida, went to elementary, middle school, high school there. Really
all
loved
in
it.
the Miami
in Miami, yeah,
area?
Yeah, South Miami,
okay.
Close to the University of Miami, actually.
Okay.
Although wasn't a Canes fan, was a Gator fan growing up, so we can get to that later on.
We'll get into that later. Okay.
But no, yeah, grew up in Miami, absolutely loved it there. Spent my summers in New Orleans, still had family there, but I claim Miami as home.
Okay, but your extended family would call New Orleans home.
Yeah. So my mom, and really a lot of her family is still in the area. After Katrina hit New Orleans, some of them moved to Lafayette, Louisiana, which is a great little town in Louisiana. If you've never been, awesome food, great crawfish.
Yep.
And then some actually moved to Houston, which ironically, in my journey, I was there as well and got to see some of my family that was relocated there after Katrina.
Okay. And you have a Hispanic name. What's your ethnicity? What's your...
Yeah, so my dad is, his family's from Nicaragua, in Central America.
Okay.
And really big part of my heritage and something I'm very proud of is, having that Nicaraguan descent. My dad and my grandfather and grandmother always made sure that I wore that proudly, and that they took me to Nicaragua. I would spend summers there as well. I'd split time between New Orleans and Nicaragua. And
really, because you had family?
Yeah, and actually, just I won't go too deep into it, but my grandfather was in politics in Nicaragua and actually was educated here in the United States. Went to Cornell Law School and was really big into agriculture. And so he traveled the world looking for plants and other things that he could bring back to Nicaragua to help them grow crops, other things like that. And so he was on Somoza, who was the president of Nicaragua back many moons ago. He was on his cabinet as the Secretary of Agriculture. And ultimately went into a position where he actually oversaw the country for about 2 years as the head of a triumvirate that ruled the country. Okay. And so I say all that because one, my grandfather would talk to me all the time about politics in Nicaragua, and I always was fascinated about that as a kid. But culturally, I just thought it was so terrific to be able to go down there, and it makes you so appreciative of what we have here in this wonderful country, and just to see that, to experience that, and have that be part of my heritage is something I'm very proud of.
Do you still have any family connections in Nicaragua?
Yeah, so I actually have an uncle that spends about half of his year there in Nicaragua and back and forth in Miami. And we obviously have a bunch of cousins and other family members that live down there. I have not been back in, I want to say, probably 8 years or so. It's been a while. It's been a bit turbulent there, with the political situation and other things. But just a beautiful country, beautiful people. So appreciative of anything you could do for them. I remember I would go with my dad and we'd bring baseball gloves and baseball bats, down to the kids there and just make their year, by doing that. And so, I still have some family down there, but I'm going to get back there. I would love to take my kids there sometime.
That's fantastic. And how did why New Orleans for your extended family? Because I assume they were also most if not all were from Nicaragua. Yeah,
great question. So obviously my mom, she's from New Orleans, but my dad's side was granted asylum actually from Nicaragua, and they came to the United States during the Sandinista Revolution. Oh. And so when they came to the States, they started a seafood business, and they lost everything during the revolution in Nicaragua, so they had to come and live the American dream. And they came over and they started a seafood business, and that was actually in New Orleans, Louisiana. And,
that makes sense.
Yeah, my dad didn't speak a word of English, and
really
got thrown into the fire. Actually went to college here in Michigan, and they planted their roots down in New Orleans. And a guy from Nicaragua met a Irish-German woman from Chalmette, Louisiana, and that was quite the combination, and the rest is history. Okay. So that's where they settled when they came over.
And what did your dad do for work that he took his family to Miami?
Yeah, so my dad worked for a company at the time was called ADP, Automatic Data Processing. They're a big payroll company, but he was actually they had an automotive division, and my dad, his whole life really, when he first started working, was in the car business.
No kidding.
Yeah, he sold cars, and he was a general manager of a dealership, and then he got out of that and got into sales on the other side in terms of selling, computer systems, hardware, software, whatever it might be, to car dealerships. So he did that, got a job there, and the company was eventually bought out by another company out of Seattle, I think CDK. And so he worked for them for 30 years and traveled a ton. He had Central South America and the Caribbean was his area. So that's why Miami made sense. And so he, my kids don't see me much because I'm working a lot, but I didn't see my dad for weeks at a time because he would be out traveling and being in those countries. But he always would bring me back good food, good hot sauce, good other things that he'd come back from the Caribbean. So that's what brought us there.
That's cool. Yeah, and I get this a lot from my kids. They didn't really get to see a lot of me. Back in my professional days. I get it. That's,
no question.
You do what you got to do.
Yep.
Tell me about growing up in Miami.
Loved it. I moved there, and it was. I can remember. I was 5, but I remember like it was yesterday. I was really close to my family in New Orleans, so it took a little bit getting adjusted to. But once I found my groove, I absolutely love Miami. The thing that I think I like the most about it is just the culture and the diversity down there in South Florida. And, having friends from all different backgrounds and different cultures, that was so great for me growing up. And in a lot of ways, I feel, that's what drew me to New Mexico. And one of the things actually during the interview, I think we talked a little bit about, feels like 10 years ago, but that was only like 6 months ago.
Just a few months ago.
But I love that about Miami, and every time I don't go back as much as I should, but that always was something that was really appealing to me and something I really, locked in on when I was there, and making sure that I took advantage of every opportunity to meet people and grow and understand different cultures. And that's what I loved about Miami.
Okay. That's cool. As an aside, you made a reference about, just arriving here in New Mexico, although it does seem like it was 10 years ago just because of everything you've gone through. But you made a phrase "we," and just for the listeners' benefit. So the President Stokes put me on the search committee for the replacement for Eddie Nunez. So I got an early look at Fern.
I remember I prepared my tail off for that. Did research, was watching YouTube videos of Doug Campbell and the whole deal. I was making sure I uncovered every stone, getting ready for that.
No, that was, and actually, when we get into the career side of things, I wouldn't mind getting your perspective on that whole process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So put a pin in that.
You got it.
Okay, so what were you like as a kiddo? I mean, were you pretty athletic right from the get-go?
Yeah, I tried to be. Genetics, I love my parents, but they weren't in my favor. But I played a lot of sports.
Okay. I mean, you're kind of tall. Were they not?
Tall. My parents are. They are tall. They just weren't physically, the genetics were in my favor, but in terms of my skills and my abilities, right? I wasn't the fastest, or my hand-eye coordination wasn't the best. The only thing I think I could do at a fairly good level was shoot 3-pointers, but that ended quickly. But I played sports growing up. Every sport that I could play, I played, and always being around it, and I love getting coached, and I love the camaraderie amongst the team, and so I played a lot of sports growing up. Actually, little known fact about me, I was in the band for quite a bit.
You were?
Yeah, I was a flute player, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. Little known fact
this
about
was in
Fernando.
high school?
I didn't go in high school, but growing up, I all the way through elementary school, middle school, I stopped going into high school.
Your elementary and middle school had a band?
Oh yeah, they did in Miami. It was a big deal. So I really enjoyed music, and I played piano, played guitar. I don't do those things anymore. I really want to. It's something I want to pick back up again. But my parents were always so great. They supported me and took me from here to there and let me pursue my interest, whether it be music or sports. And, my dad's family all lived down there in Miami. And so we had a really good support system. But, growing up, it was sports, it was music, and it was friends, and being outdoors, go to the beach, go to the pool. Yeah. A couple of my friends had boats and their families, so we'd go out and fish and do all those things. So really, really good memories.
Okay. How were your grades?
They're pretty good.
Really?
I was a good student. I was. My parents were really hard on me. They were very, very much focused on academics and never let me take my eye off the ball. And I was so appreciative of that. I can remember coming home with a B one time, and my pops looked at me and said, "Hey, you're better than that. You can get an A." And I was a bit disappointed because it was a challenging class.
Even a B was unacceptable.
Yeah, but I appreciated that.
Do you remember what class that was?
Gosh, you know what? It was some math class. I can't remember.
It's always those math classes.
Yeah, the math classes would always trip me up. But I remember at the time thinking, "Geez, I tried my best, and I thought I did pretty well." But that, now looking back on it, that sort of attention to that and just the discipline and all of that, I think really helped me in my professional career. And I'm just appreciative of that. But I was a pretty good student.
Okay. And so 18-year-old Fern graduates from high school. Yep. You went immediately into University of Florida, correct?
Yeah.
Why'd you choose Florida?
That's a funny story. So I was quite possibly the biggest Gator fan ever growing up. And I had no reason to be. I didn't have any family that went there. I moved to Miami. You would think maybe I'd be a Hurricanes fan, but I wasn't. I had Gator stuff all over my room. I was a huge Gator football fan.
Did? Really?
They'd lose games, I would cry. I mean, it was a lot, right? But I became a huge Gator fan. And so for me, that was the dream of a lifetime, to be able to go to the University of Florida. And so when I applied and got in, and that was it. I wasn't focused.
So you were Gainesville or bust.
I was, yeah.
Okay.
I took visits to 2 other schools. Out of curiosity. One is Tulane, obviously, in New Orleans. And ironically enough, the only other one I went to go visit was Texas, where I just came from.
Where you spent quite a bit of time.
I had my godfather lived out in Texas, and so we went out there, and I liked it, but I had my orange and blue shirt on under my jacket even when I was in Austin. So it was a Gator from the start, and so when I had the opportunity to go there, I jumped at it and had a great time there.
Okay, that's awesome. You talk about being a Gators fan. What about pro sports? You big Dolphins, Heat?
I'm all over the map. Get ready for this one.
Okay.
So Miami Heat fan, absolutely.
Okay.
I am a big New Orleans Saints fan. And
okay,
it was
kind of,
just being born in New Orleans.
I get
and,
it.
We went to Saints games and all that when I was there. So I was a big New Orleans Saints fan, and I'm a big, I don't know how many of us exist, but I can tell you I'm a big Marlins fan, former Florida Marlins fan, and now Miami Marlins. I've always loved the Marlins. So Marlins, Heat, and Saints. Those are my pro teams right there.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Somewhat eclectic.
Yeah, very much so.
And by the way, teenager Fern, any thoughts on career?
So, I always thought two things. One, I thought that I was going to be in law. I thought I was going to go to law school.
Really?
That was kind of my...
Why law?
Well, I being around my grandfather and hearing him talk about politics, and he had a law background, it was always
so
something.
He was a lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay.
He got his degree from Cornell in law. And,
you mentioned that.
Yeah. And so it was always, to me, it was kind of like, okay, that seems pretty cool, not knowing, much at the time. That was kind of, when I was a young buck, that was on my mind. And then, but I was always obsessed with sports. And like I told you during my interview process, as soon as I got to the University of Florida, I found my way into working in sports. And when I got that and I got there, I realized this is my passion and this is what I really, really think I want to do. Now, my parents said, "Are you sure you don't want to go to law school?" And so I went through the whole deal, took the LSAT, and I was like, yeah, Mom, I didn't do so hot on the LSAT. Maybe I'm just going to stick with sports. Not saying or admitting that I didn't prepare well for the LSAT, but maybe I am a little bit. But yeah, it was either law or sports for me. Was the two pathways there. So
okay, and then eventually it was sports.
Yeah.
Okay,
for sure.
So talk to me about your journey into sports admin.
Yeah. So when I got to the University of Florida, the way that this all happened for me was I knew I wanted to get into sports. I didn't really know how to be honest.
Specifically collegiate sports or just sports?
Yeah, just sports in general.
Okay.
But I was such a big college football fan that, I was like, if I could find any opportunity to get in with football, that's what I'm going to do. And so it's funny how the world works. And so my friend had an older brother that was going to school at the University of Florida, and we were roommates together in the summer in fall of our freshman year. And his brother would come over, and he was always decked out in Gator gear. It was like the coolest. We were joking about quarter zips before and just all this. It's the same thing. I was like, where is he getting all this gear from? Like he must know somebody.
And this is when you were a freshman or back in high school?
Yeah, when I was a freshman in Florida. Yeah. Okay. And so I asked my friend, and he goes, yeah, he works for the football team. And he goes, I go, well, what's he do? He goes, he's an equipment manager. And I go, sounds great. And so I went and asked around. And at first, I played basketball growing up. So I was going to try to go down the path of going to be a basketball equipment manager. But there were no spots. I was at Florida during great times with Billy Donovan and Urban Meyer there. But there was a spot in football. They just didn't tell me exactly what I was going to be doing. And it was washing clothes and folding towels. And they said, sure, we'll take help. They always can use some help. Okay. And I got in there and I never looked back. So that's how I got my start.
So your first gig was laundry.
Oh, for sure.
Laundry attendant.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I was the best damn laundry attendant in Gainesville because here's what I would do is nobody wanted the laundry shifts, and I would take them all the time, which meant I was staying at the office until 11 midnight and after practice, and I would stay there and I would do my homework and just wait for the buzzer to sound.
Yeah, because there's a lot of downtime.
There is
when you're on laundry duty.
Yeah, so I took a lot of pride in that laundry duty. But to be honest with you, I knew that when I did that and I came out of there and I said, I love this, I want to do more. I'm like, okay, this is probably my passion, because if I can be okay with doing laundry and staying there till midnight while I'm doing homework for school, I'm like, I think I'm pretty passionate about this. So it all worked out that way.
Was there also an element of impressing the boss?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, wow, it's 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. Fern's car's still in the parking lot.
Yeah, no question. That was one thing that, I learned, and my dad really, taught me this, is just, you may not always be the smartest or have the answers for everything, but there's no substitute for hard work. And I know everybody says that, but I really took that to heart, and I wanted to make sure that people saw me as someone that was never going to be outworked, and that's a bold statement. Of course, there's people that work their tail off, but I wanted to make sure that if I wasn't going to get the opportunity or I wasn't going to be given a chance, it wasn't going to be because I didn't work hard enough. And so I took that mindset, and I'm not kidding. I told my boss, I said, I'll take every laundry shift. He goes, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Probably a lot, but just give it to me because I need the experience." So,
Okay. What was next after laundry?
So after laundry was, I made a step up in life. I became the head equipment manager, the head student manager.
Okay.
And so I actually had other students that were student managers with me that reported to me, which was really great experience because I got to help set their schedules, and I kind of helped with practice setup, and
was this just for football?
It was just for football.
Okay,
yeah, it was just for football. And so I took a step up there, and really took a leadership role amongst the students, and kind of became the senior leader of that group. And it gave me really good management experience. And at the time, I didn't even realize how impactful it would be moving forward. But setting schedules and overseeing the practice and all of that stuff, and really being intentional in that role about developing relationships with the coaches. And that to me was the tipping point in my career. And as a, 19, 20-year-old, sometimes you get a little, nervous when you see Coach Urban Meyer as a Hall of Fame, 3-time national champion.
Ultimately, that's who was the head coach.
He was the head coach. Yeah. And so I would always try to be intentional about making sure that I went out of my way for him to see me. And I'll digress a little bit because I think this is a good story for just how lucky I've been in my career. Is at the time we had Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow.
Oh wow, you guys had a huge spotlight on you.
And our practice fields were actually across from our stadium where our locker room was, and so they literally couldn't walk back from practice because they would get mobbed for autographs. It was like the Beatles were coming to town, and so I asked Coach Meyer. I said, "Hey, Coach, you want me to give you a ride back?" And he said, "Sure, that sounds good." So I was doing that for like 2 or 3 months. And oftentimes we didn't really talk much. He was on the phone or whatever. But one day I drove in, and it was like I had been doing for the last few months. And I drove into the alley where I drop him off. He got out, closed the door, and I turned, my head around to back out. And all of a sudden I hear on the hood. And I turn around and I look, "Oh, did you leave your phone or what?" "Yes, sir." He opens the door. I say, "Yes, sir." He goes, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I'd love to work in athletics."
Yeah.
He goes, "How about you come up and see me tomorrow? I'll help you out." And I was like, wow. So that night I went home, called my mom. I did, "You'll never believe Coach Meyer, blah, blah, blah." So the next day I go up, and that's when he said, "Hey, I'm going to take you down here." And he transitioned me with the head of football operations there. And that's when my career really started to take off. But it was that moment, right, that it happened, and I'll never forget it. I think that was the moment.
Because you were, for 4 months, you were his Uber driver.
That's right, 100%. It's just those stories that you would never believe. But it was just either luck or by the grace of God that it happened that way, because I was able to have interactions, and even if it was a 2-second conversation, just having that connection. And obviously he saw something and wanted to help me, and the rest was history. So
so that next day you go see him.
Yep.
I want to make you head of football operations.
Yeah.
And by the way, what is head of football operations?
So well, I wasn't head just yet. I was still a student.
Got it.
But I went there and I worked with his head of football operations, which he actually ended up leaving, and a new gentleman came in. And so he really gave me a lot of responsibilities. This was while I was still an undergrad, getting ready to go to grad school. And football operations it's the business side of football, right?
Okay.
It's budgets, calendars, scheduling, travel. Now football ops directors are doing so much more, just given the world that we're in with college athletics. But it's the complete business side of the operation on the football side of it.
Got it. And so still as an undergrad, so you're doing this as essentially like a student intern, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. I was a paid student for an undergrad. And then back to my law school story, when I took the LSAT and said, "Oops, I didn't do so well." That's when I transitioned to grad school, and I got my master's in sports administration, and I was a GA Then they transitioned me to a graduate assistant in football operations. So that was kind of the next step in my journey, both academically and professionally.
And so you did bachelor's, then straight into master's.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I did.
Okay. And then I guess, and so it looks to me, I'm operating off LinkedIn here.
Yeah.
Your first kind of non-student full-time gig would be this football operations assistant? Or was that still as a grad student?
So I was still a grad student at Florida, so I was still in school there.
Okay.
What happened was Coach Meyer had retired briefly.
Yeah, I remember his failed attempt at a retirement.
Yeah, he retired, and I was in my last semester of my grad program, and I needed it to graduate. I needed some sort of practical experience, and I remember walking into the new coach's director of operations and said, "Hey, you don't even need to pay me." I said, "I've been here for 4 years. I know a lot. I can help you." Mm-hmm. And the gentleman looked me in the eye and said, "That's okay. I don't need your help." And I said, "Okay." So I walked out, and that was kind of the first time in my career, in my life, I was like, wow, I got to go figure something out. So I actually went and worked for about 6 months at Disney, at the ESPN Wild World of Sports.
Yeah, I saw that.
There, so I could finish my master's degree. And it was
because you needed that experience
I needed
as part of your program?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I did that. And then while I was there, Coach Meyer was calling and he said, "Hey, I think I'm going to get this Ohio State job. And if I get it, do you want to come with me?" And I said, "Not yet." I said, "Hell yeah. Just let me know. I'll walk there." And so my first job, I say full-time job. It wasn't even that when I got there. It took me about 2 months to get a full-time role. But my first job outside of being a student was at The Ohio State University.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And I have a little bit of experience with Ohio State. I have a couple siblings that graduated from there. I know what a big deal the Buckeyes are for sure. For Columbus, although, again, you're coming from Gainesville and University of Florida. Yeah. Also kind of a big deal in their community. And it looks like in total you were there for 3 years in Columbus. Yeah, tell me about your experience at Ohio State.
One of my fondest memories of just really my whole life. I mean, obviously, I met my wife there in Ohio.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, she's from Northeast Ohio. She's from Canada. No, she actually went to Toledo, but she was working there in Columbus. And it took me 2.5 years to meet her.
To find her?
Yeah. And we finally found each other, and that's I've just been so blessed with that. But I will tell you, we had an amazing experience there in Columbus. We got there, and we went 24-0. We won our first 24 games. We went undefeated in 2012, and we actually had a bowl ban that year from one of I forget exactly what it was, but we were 12-0 and undefeated on top of the world. And then the next season, in 2013 season, we went 12-0 again in the regular season. And then we actually ended up losing in the conference championship and then in the bowl game. But then in 2014 is when we won a national championship. Mm-hmm. And that was incredible. And when I was at the University of Florida, they actually won 2 national championships there as well. So again, just been really fortunate to be around, some of those championship performances and coaches and everything else. And so I loved my time in Columbus. Mm-hmm. My wife and I were dating for 6 months, and our offensive coordinator there at Ohio State at the time, really good coach, Tom Herman, got the job at University of Houston. And I want to say 26 or 27 at the time.
According to LinkedIn, 2015.
Yeah. So I forget exactly, but I was young, and he came to me and he said, "Hey," he goes, "I want to take you to the University of Houston. What do you think about that to run the show down there?" Because I was an assistant at Ohio State. And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And I'm like, oh my gosh, my at the time, my girlfriend, now my wife, we've only been dating for 6 months. And I said, "Hey, I'm sorry."
Presumably you guys weren't even living together?
No, we weren't.
Okay.
No, we weren't. And I said, I told you that this might be a fast and furious journey. And I said, I wasn't lying. I got offered a job at the University of Houston, and obviously I accepted it. And she chose to come to Houston with me. She did. Yeah. So. And
by the way, where was Urban Meyer in all this?
So Urban was great. He was, so supportive, and he's been that way my whole career. My gosh. I mean, I owe him so much.
He's one of your mentors, correct?
He is. And he really, really has invested in me professionally and personally. Mm-hmm. He was so hard on me, and I'm so appreciative of that. what he would tell me and how he would go about it, and just the lessons he taught me, even when it was, hey, it's time for you to go spread your wings, and, he was always just so great, and still is to this day. And so
he encouraged you
he did
to follow your offensive coordinator?
He did. I actually remember going into his office, and I asked him, I said, Coach, hey, Coach Herman, I think he's going to offer me this job to run the operations down at the University of Houston. And I said, well, what do you think? And he looked at me and he goes, Fern, he goes, what do you think I said when they called me at Bowling Green and offered me the job? He goes, I'll tell you what I said. I'm going right away. He goes, don't even think about it. You absolutely have to do this. And I was like, yes, sir. That's all I needed to hear. So he was so supportive, and he encouraged me every step of the way. So,
okay. And, it's funny, I've being so involved at UNM athletics, but it's all been very recent to me, and it never occurred to me what a sort of transient lifestyle you have to live.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Are you okay with that? I mean, I guess you have to be.
Yeah. I certainly,
because climbing the ladder means physical moves.
Yeah. And, my mom said that to me, when I was choosing to make, this my profession versus law school. She goes, just so you're going to have to move a lot. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. When you're 18 years or whatever it is, you're like, you don't have kids, and you're sure, let's go ahead and let's do it, but I think the best example to use is, my wife and I this summer will be married 9 years, and this was our fifth move in 9 years.
Wow.
And
you're averaging less than 2 years per stop.
Yeah. We were, ironically, and some of that we moved, and I'm counting where we moved from house to house or apartment to house, but still, it's a lot, right? Yeah. And so we were in Austin for 8 years, and that was a time, where we felt like, hey, at least we were able to put some roots down, and with a break in between going to Jacksonville. But it is a very transient lifestyle, and as we all know, we're only as good as our support system. And I'm so blessed with Jordan that she's willing to take this journey with me, and I had this experience when I was in Jacksonville with the Jaguars, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I had a moment where I had offered a job from a place that we had just left from, and she was pregnant with our daughter, and she could have very easily said, no, don't do that. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, go chase your dreams. You want to be an AD. That's what you said from the beginning. This is a chance for you to really start that pathway and go, make that move towards that. She goes, I'm there with you. I'm right behind you, and just so appreciative. But I will say, moving is a lot. And it takes a toll, no question. And so, and the older our kids get, the harder it becomes. Right now they're like, oh, look, it's a new place and all this. But when they start, friends and all of that, everybody knows how that goes. So it's a tough lifestyle. There's no doubt.
Yeah, no, I get it. So let's catch up, because you made a couple of references to University of Texas and then Jacksonville Jaguars. So you spent 2 years at Houston.
Yep.
And then didn't go that far.
Yeah.
Houston to Austin.
Right down the road. Yep.
And so, each one of these is a step up, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So talk to me about iteration 1 at University of Texas.
Yeah. So iteration 1 was, we had a ton of success. I was at the University of Houston with Coach Herman, just caught lightning in a bottle. We were 3-0 against top 5 teams. Just some amazing accomplishments. Texas came calling. It was Coach Herman's dream job, took the job there. And my title was different there. I was football chief of staff. And my role was different. Every institution's different, right? I had somewhat of the same responsibilities, but even though I was specific to football, I was able to really cut my teeth administratively there. In terms of being more engaged with the administrative side, which really helped me, because obviously I always wanted to be an AD. And so the first iteration was that, I oversaw our football operations. I oversaw all of our, if you weren't a coach, you reported to me. And,
got it.
So I had a huge group of people that reported to me, which, I think when I got the job there, I was 30, maybe 29, 30 years old. So at a young age, I was given a lot of responsibility, and I had a coach that believed in me and really just said, hey, I trust you. Go figure it out. And I think that's the best way to do it. And I was so fortunate there to really, because that level of ball is different. I mean, it's a pressure cooker of a job there. And there's a lot of things that pull your coach in different directions there, and other things, and that don't necessarily happen on a Saturday, right? That go with being that coach. And so being able to be in that role to help kind of be a strategic visionary, if you would, for the football program was really important for my professional growth. So was there for 4 seasons. Obviously COVID during that time was challenging, and there was a lot going on, in the world that during both with the pandemic, but also in college athletics. And ultimately they chose to move on from Coach Herman, and they hired another coach, which I'm sure we'll get into that in a second, before my journey to Jacksonville, but was really, really good experience. Really enjoyed my 4 years doing that and learned a ton. And that's when I met Chris Delcani, who's now the AD at Texas, who's another.
Oh, so he wasn't the AD.
He actually didn't hire us. Yeah.
Interesting.
We had another AD, wonderful man by the name of Mike Perrin that hired us, and he was an interim AD, and so he served in that role for.
When you say hired us, this was Coach Herman.
Out of Houston.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
And so did he just take all of his staff from Houston to Austin?
We took a lot of our folks that were with us at Houston, and we had a much larger operation at Texas just because of the resources we had. But our coaches and a lot of the support staff came with us from Houston.
Which, as an aside, now with a front row seat to UNM athletics, I watched the exact same thing happen with Richard Pitino and Bronco Mendenhall.
Oh yeah.
The whole staff goes with them.
Everybody, and I get it. Like when you have success, I mean, they say dance with the ones that got you there. And I respected that a lot about Coach and just his loyalty to those that helped us have all that success, and ultimately that was the reason why he got the job. So. Okay,
and so your departure from Austin 4 years later was because your coach was let go.
Ironically, so he was let go. I actually stayed on with Coach Sarkisian, who's now the coach, the football coach there, for I want to say 2 weeks, and I had every intention of staying. I was not let go during the transition, which is unusual, in those roles. A lot of times a coach will bring in their own person. And I was fortunate that, I had a really good relationship with our athletic director and the administration, just because of the trials and tribulations we had to deal with together, that everybody you get really close during those times. So I remember, I was told that, hey, you're going to remain on staff as chief of staff. And I was like, wow, like that's amazing. Thank you so much. And then the phone rings and I look down, Urban Meyer. And I answer. I said, "Hey, Coach." I said, "What's going on?" Because his name had been in the mix for some college jobs and NFL jobs. And he said, "Hey," he goes, "I got 2 jobs that I might get in the NFL. If I get one of them, would you want to come with me?" And I'm like, "Wow, the NFL, professional sports," and I could see where college athletics was going. And I said, "Let me think about it a little bit." And I went home and talked to my wife, and I called him back eventually, and I said, "Yeah, Coach, I'm in. If you get a job, let me know." And so 2 or 3 days later, he called me back, and the Jaguars had offered him the job, and I was on a plane to Jacksonville, and chief of staff there, and very different in terms of setup and structure.
I can imagine.
Yeah, very much so. But that was the reason why I left Texas. I had every intention of staying, and was so fortunate. And Coach Sark's such a good guy, and I really enjoyed working with him for the first 2.5 weeks, and I was off to Jacksonville. So
but you're only there a year.
Yeah, that's back to my story about walking in and telling my pregnant wife that maybe we're going to move back to Austin. It had only been 10 months actually. Maybe close to 11, but it was less than a year. And I left to go to the NFL because if you get a chance to go to the professional, it's so valuable, and those jobs are so hard to get. And as someone that had spent my whole career in college athletics, I felt like professionally for me, it was the best decision. And I'm so grateful that I did that, because what I learned in those 10 months, I mean, my gosh, at this day and age, we're turning into a professional organization in college athletics. So a lot of the lessons I learned there were so helpful to me. I was there for 10 months, and a gentleman that was at the University of Texas actually got the head AD job at Temple, and there was an opening there. And, I had started having some conversations back again with with the folks at Texas and, kind of gauging interest, would I be interested? And, one thing led to another, and, I finally got serious, and I gathered enough courage to come home and ask my wife if she'd be, willing to make this move when we had literally just moved. We made 3 mortgage payments on our house because.
So you bought a home?
We bought a home, and we were actually, it was a house that was already being built.
Okay.
And so we couldn't even get in until July. And I think I left in November. So whatever, it was 3 or 4 mortgage payments. And so.
Oh, wow.
I walked in and I asked my wife, I said, hey, I think this Texas thing is real. And it's my opportunity to dive headfirst fully into administration. And, I had my speech ready. We got this person is going to help me, and I think I can, accelerate my career where I want to go. And kind of looked at each other, and she said what I told you before. She said, go do it. She said, chase your dreams. I got your back. And then it's not going to be easy. Yeah. And she, had her belly was, with little Layla in there. Okay. And I said, okay, well, I love you. Let's go see what's going to happen. So it was 10, 11 months, and we were back in Austin, right where we came from. So. And
little Layla was born in Austin.
Okay. Let me tell you this story.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. So I get on the plane to go back to Austin. And Jordan she was very pregnant at the time. And I get there, so I land my first night back in Austin.
She's with you, or she's back in Jacksonville?
No, she's not. She's back in Jacksonville. Okay. So I'm laying in bed. I'm standing at a friend's house. Phone rings. I think I'm going into labor. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, let me book a flight. Boom, boom. And so I start going. And so I go to the airport, and the doctor sent her home. And they said, hey, you're not having this baby right now. So she called me. She goes, don't come back. It's your first day in the office. Like, go ahead. I'm okay, I promise, because my parents were in Jacksonville. I said, okay. It's like, I don't know. So I go to sleep, get 2 hours of sleep, go to work the next day. I'm sitting in Texas, filling out my HR paperwork. Phone rings. I'm having this baby. Back to the hospital. I couldn't get back in time. I missed Layla.
You missed it.
I missed the birth of Layla.
Oh,
yeah.
shoot.
So she had my first day back at Texas. She had little Layla, and so that was a tough. You talk about the profession being challenging. Those are the moments that and again, she's so great and understanding, but those are the challenging moments. And but we have it's a good story, I suppose, now that we could tell about it.
Totally. And your folks were there.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, my dad's name is Fernando as well, so he was there.
He is?
Fernando was there for the birth, just not the right Fernando. Yeah. So
okay, that's awesome. What was this new role that you stepped into back at Austin?
So it was a role that I was honestly very familiar with because, again, like I said, when I was at Texas, even though I worked specifically in football, I was very involved in a lot of our administrative things in terms of capital projects and fundraising for those and other things of that nature. It just, when I was still tied to a coach, right? I was in football. And so this was an opportunity for me to dive headfirst into administration and really try to accelerate my career. So the role was, when I got back there, I oversaw a couple of our internal units, our capital projects. We did a lot of work with the city and other things. I also had oversight of quite a few of our sports programs there. And so it was full-time, 100% AD work. And it really, helped me a lot, I think, in terms of just making sure that I was putting myself in the right position to, my goal was always to try to be an athletic director by the time I was 40. And so I knew that
you got there.
I was able to get there by people believing in me and the grace of God. And so when I got back there, I was there for 2 or 3 months, and I've always seen this has always kind of happened. I feel like in my career, I was there, and someone that was there that was there for a while left, and there was a bunch of responsibility that now needed an owner. And someone once told me 2 things that have always stood out to me. One was to chase responsibility before anything else. And I know that's obvious, but sometimes in your journey you can get lost and you can get confused as about what's important. And so I was able to gather a lot more responsibility quickly at Texas. And the other one was, to be good at the job you want, you got to be great at the job you have. So to me,
very good advice.
The more that I could, I never ask title or pay. None of that stuff really ever mattered, right? And I know people say that, but I was very intentional about telling myself that because it kept me focused on what I needed. And what I needed was as much responsibility as I could get. And I needed to be uncomfortable. That to me was the thing that the job was so appealing. Going back to Texas is what was that, I could have stayed in football, and I feel like I had a pretty good rhythm of where things were, even in the NFL, it was comfortable for me. But, to me, discomfort equals growth, right? And so when I dove back in at Texas, there was a lot of things that I took on that I didn't have a ton of experience with, but people trusted me to do those things and to handle those things. And that really, really helped me grow. And so a lot of really good things happened when I was back there, and I was fortunate to get more and more responsibility. And then, was able to execute, I feel like, at a fairly high level, and most importantly, do it collaboratively and try to treat people the right way along the way.
Who was Chris Del Conte? Was he the athletic director who hired you?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He hired me.
Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah,
by the way, he's a New Mexican.
He is. He's a native New Mexican. And even though I took this job sight unseen here in New Mexico, I feel like I had been here before because he grew up in Taos, New Mexico. Okay. He grew up on a farm. They had a children's home there as well. His parents, wonderful people that raised children and did things in the community. I mean, I'll do it a disservice trying to explain all the great work that they did, but just terrific people. And proud New Mexican, loves this place. Told me a lot about it. But the thing about him is that he was he was a hard worker. And he was so good at what he did, but he was so good with people. And he made people feel so important, regardless of who you were or what you did. And I even felt that when I was a young buck, when I first got to Texas and he first got the job, I was in awe of him because he's one of the best ADs in the country. And so even back in 2018, when I was in football and, he was just getting there, I tried to, kind of like I did with Coach Meyer, I tried to go and say, hey, I want to be you one day. Yeah. Let me in. Let me behind the curtain.
Do you need an Uber driver?
Yeah, seriously. I didn't go that far. I wasn't that desperate. But me asking that, he let me behind the curtain, and so I was able to gain experience. And then when I got back there, I was so fortunate to be able to be on his leadership team and be in these meetings. And I would take notes. And I actually sent him a text the other day. I was going, dealing with something, and I remember something that he said, and it helped me kind of navigate what I was thinking. And I just sent him a text that said, hey, I just want to let you know, thank you for everything you taught me, because I use it all the time. And that was because he allowed me and allowed us, to be truly on his team. And he was very collaborative about the way he approached things. And I try to be the same way with my staff because it helped me grow so much. I mean, my gosh, I was back for 4 years, and I can't tell you, how much he helped me grow in those 4 years when I was back there to prepare me for this opportunity.
Your second stint at UT Austin was 4 years?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it was 4 years.
By the way, both Urban and Chris, mentors?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I talked to Chris quite a bit, obviously during the coaching searches. He's a close confidant, and he's done a great job hiring coaches across, his career. And then, and Urban, to this day, we stay in touch. We talk very often. And the one thing that I appreciate about those, and I have obviously other mentors, but we're talking about them, is they always answer when I call. Okay. And they're honest. They're brutally honest with me. And they tell me, even if I don't want to hear it, they'll tell me. And 100% mentors, but more than that, friends and really family to me. Yeah. They both took me in like family and treated me and my wife so well. So 100%. They're a big part of why I've been able to come to New Mexico.
Okay. So. Well, on that note, tell me about becoming the athletic director of the University of New Mexico.
Yeah. No, it's I can remember.
We're literally talking about 6 or 7 months ago.
Yep. I was driving to work one morning, and I got a text from one of the search firm who was running the search, and sent me a message about New Mexico, and I said, hey, read this posting, let me know what you think, and I remember the stoplight I was at when I got it, and I was fired up. I was like, wow, this, I don't know a whole bunch about New Mexico or the Lobos. I said, but I do know someone who does. And so
That's right.
I went up and I talked to Chris, and he goes, are you kidding me? He goes, the opportunity to be the AD at New Mexico. He goes, you better run to that if you got the chance. And so from that moment, I put everything into the process. I learned quickly early on, just doing my research about the institution, about the state, and just talking to some people in the industry that would know everything that I now see today. The power, the importance of New Mexico, the University of the flagship, right, in a great state. And the fact that, we are the biggest show in town.
Yeah.
We're the Yankees, and people care so much about the Lobos. And so the process itself was, obviously you were a big part of that. And, everything that I felt in the process has been true. It has come true when I step foot here, right? Okay. In terms of how people care, how invested they are, the questions that they ask, all of those things. The process to me was a great one. It was handled terrifically, having the opportunity to meet with you and others, and then the chance to go to interview in person and, meet our board and our president and other things like that. I thought it was a really, really great process. And I prepared my tail off. I really appreciate it. And I did because I really, really desperately wanted the opportunity to come to a place like this where I felt I could have an impact, and that people cared, and that the best was ahead of us. Yeah. Right. And I felt that was true, and it absolutely is true. Yeah. Having been here for, I want to say 156 days, but who's counting? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
But great process, met great people, and I'm so thankful, obviously, sitting here today to have developed deeper relationships with some of those folks that were part of the process.
Yeah. How was the news delivered to you? Does the recruiter call you, or not the recruiter, but the Parker?
Gosh,
does he call you, or does President Stokes call you?
So you ask great questions because I've got good stories about this. Okay. So I got a text from the recruiter that said, "Hey, be on the lookout. You might be getting a call this weekend."
Like a nod, wink, wink kind of thing?
No, it wasn't. There wasn't like a tip of the hand or anything. Okay. That just be prepared, because I was one of the finalists. And
you were, right.
I was, whether it was good or bad, I was expecting a phone call. Okay. So it was Thanksgiving weekend, I believe. It also was my daughter's birthday. Okay. And so get up in the morning, get ready. We had a birthday party. The family's coming over, and knock on the door, open the door. It's Cinderella. We had Cinderella come that day for my daughter's birthday party. Okay.
Okay.
And so I'm there. We're singing happy birthday. Phone rings. It's the president.
It is President Stokes?
Yes. So I run into my room, close the door, have the conversation. She offers me the job. And I said, President Stokes, of course, I'm in. Let's go. I can't wait. I said, but also I can honestly say I'm living in a fairy tale right now. I've got Cinderella in my living room, and I've got on the phone right now being offered the job at New Mexico. So she delivered the news, and it was during my daughter's birthday party. So it was an unbelievable day in the Lovo household. We were very fired up.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah,
that is an awesome. Okay. So what'd you think when you got here? And you didn't have much time to think, because I think it was literally a matter of days. And when Bronco said he was going to go to Utah State.
Yeah. It was definitely a whirlwind when I first got here. Press conference. One day, the next day, we're having deep conversations with Bronco about his future, and we had been doing that even when I was in Austin, before I'd even stepped foot in New Mexico.
You kind of knew that this was a possibility.
I did.
Correct?
Yeah. You just having been around the game for a while and gotten to know coaches, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, you can get a sense. You can read the tea leaves. But at the same time, like I said, when he left, we were trying everything in our power to make sure, we could try to retain him. And he did a terrific job, and was an awesome person to get to know. And
Bronco's
great guy.
Nothing but respect for Bronco.
Except for the Saturday when we play him, I'm pulling for him, and I hope they do really well. He was great to me in my short time, and wish him the best. But I got here, and I think it was 3 or 4 days. I was still trying to figure out which key opened up my office and which way the restroom was, and we're going to hire a football coach. Yep. And so, the one thing I will tell you, and I've said this publicly before, I think the benefit in that is that sometimes you can get paralysis by analysis, but I didn't have time for that.
No, you got thrown in at the deep end.
It's boom, let's go, and it's jump in, and it's also, it's the process, but it's also the people.
Yeah.
And so I had to pull people that I had never worked with before, that I had just met in person 2 or 3 days before, and pull them into the room and say,
so guys like Jalen,
Dave Williams when he was here,
Dave
Andy Beggin, and I said, hey, you don't know me and I don't know you, but I think we want the same thing, and that's what's best for New Mexico football at the time.
Right.
And I need you to guide me.
Yeah.
I know what I'm looking for in a football coach.
Yeah.
But I also need your guidance on what's the right fit for this community, for this state, because people talk about fit all the time, and sometimes they make too much of it, right? But that is important. I mean, fit is important, and I didn't know what I didn't know about New Mexico, and so it really didn't give me time to get paralyzed by analysis, and so
you didn't have that luxury.
Rocked and rolled, and so it was really good. Dave's no longer here, but he was super helpful to me. Was so great during the process. Yeah, great. Well. Yeah, was in. We still stay in touch, but he was very helpful to me. He had just gone through a search a year prior with Eddie when Eddie was here, so he helped, kind of make sure that I understood what that process looked like and what things that he learned from that process that I could take to this. And these things have to happen so quickly because the transfer portal's open and everybody's getting in the portal and this, that, and the other. And we just went through it in basketball again. Yeah. But, from the day that I stepped foot on this campus in this state, the welcome has been so warm to me, to my family, and we couldn't be more thankful and grateful to be here. I told you before we were, live, that my wife told me yesterday, and she said it a bunch of times, she loves it here. Yeah. And I would echo that. I've absolutely enjoyed and loved my time here in Albuquerque, and I can't wait to continue to get to know this wonderful city and state and everything else more. But get to know more of Lobo Nation, because I've tried to make the rounds, but I know there's a lot more out there for me to see and meet, and we're just so thankful of the opportunity to be here.
Fern, talk to me broadly about college athletics. It is just changing so rapidly.
Yeah, it's actually, this is a great time to be having this podcast, because we're at the precipice of an approval of a settlement that could...
This is the House settlement?
Yeah, the House settlement will change college athletics forever. And in some ways, it already has been changed. I mean, you look at, I think there's 3 main topics when you ask about and talk about college athletics in general that have really led to kind of where we are today. One, you've got the House settlement, which I just mentioned. Then you've got conference realignment, which is, near and dear to us, right? Because we were involved in that last fall. And then you've got the transfer portal. And when you look at those 3 things, when you talk about seismic shifts to the enterprise, that's exactly what those 3 things have done. And I think we're at a moment in time where...
And each of those individually would do just that.
Exactly.
But you get all 3.
Collectively, it's like... Oh my gosh, and it's one thing, they're all play with each other. Yeah. And so you can't pull one lever without moving another. And so we're at a really challenging time right now in college athletics across the board. I mean, every day you pick up your phone or you read the news, whatever it is, and you see an article about something that's changed, or this school's in financial trouble, or there's a new lawsuit here and there. And so there's a lot of noise in the system. And I think if you're an avid college athletics or college football, basketball, whatever it is fan, you kind of understand the minutia a little bit. Right. But for the average fan, I think it's become a bit of a distraction. You've got, our men's basketball team's going to have 15 new players this year. Our football teams, Jason had to sign 60 plus players. You've got every year you're cheering for a new team. And for those that have been fans of college sports for a long time, I mean, 7-8 years ago, you would have laughed if we would have said that. It would have never happened. And so we're certainly at a crossroads right now. We're at an inflection point, and New Mexico is right square in the middle of it because we had it impact us when it came to conference realignment, just 8-9 months ago. So,
do you think the days of seeing an incoming freshman and then 4 years later seeing an outgoing senior are over?
Yeah, I would hate to be overly dramatic and say that they are, but I think we're headed in that direction. And it's not all bad. I don't want to sound doom and gloom because I think we're...
Well, no. I mean, at the end of the day, student athletes are being compensated and frankly, fairly.
Exactly.
I think it's only appropriate.
Right. And also, I say it all the time, we're in a player empowerment phase of of college athletics. And for many, many years, there were such strict limitations on what they could make, how they could transfer. Yeah. And it took one... Now the script has flipped. Yeah, exactly. It took one 9-0, Supreme Court decision, with a scathing dissenting opinion, and it's swaying in the other direction, and so it's not all bad because student athletes are being able to see, return on what they're providing to us, which is we can generate revenue based off their NIL, and we've done that for years, but now they're getting compensated fairly. I would say that's accurate.
Yeah.
And they're able to leave. And before, 3-4 years ago, if you transferred, you could only do it once and you had to sit out. And now it's free agency, but
every year.
Yeah, every year. And what they would say and what they have said and the courts have agreed with, and the NCAA has changed their rules, is a coach can leave whenever he or she wants. So why can't a player? And so that argument, frankly, has been hard to defend. You
although a coach has a contract, and oftentimes they'll have a buyout and those sorts of things. They do,
and I think I'm glad you brought that up because we are. I think some folks that listen to this may have seen that President Trump has talked about starting a commission to look at college athletics, and you've seen a lot about a push towards some federal intervention, some federal legislation. And why I think that's important is because right now, our student athletes are not employees. Right. They're not. And I think there's a lot of things that could come with them being employees that we could have a whole nother podcast to talk about that on, but that could be somewhat of a slippery slope. But because they're not, we can't do any sort of collective bargaining with them. Right. And so because there's no employer-employee type of relationship, and the exchange for their NIL rights is not an employer-employee relationship, you're right. We don't have buyouts, right? We have no enforcement mechanism, when we lose our players, and it happened to us. Clearly, we lost a lot of our players, but when you look across the landscape, it's happening everywhere, particularly in the Group of 5, Group of 6 schools where we've become somewhat of a farm system, if you would, which, you asked the question, will we see someone that's recruited and stay till they graduate? I certainly hope so, because I just actually got the statistics of this. When we have someone that stays through, we graduate up almost 90% of our student athletes, which is a staggering statistic. That's amazing.
That's fantastic.
But now they're leaving, and what's happening is their eligibility from a playing standpoint clock and their progress towards degree don't match.
And so they're diverging.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of these young men and women are getting, I'm going to this place to play. And then the whistles, they put their whistles down and the clock stops and they say, oh, wait, I don't have a degree now. And that's the travesty in all this.
It's unfortunate. It's kind of to be expected because they're jumping from one system to the next.
Exactly.
Potentially losing credits, losing focus.
But we've seen here, and I don't think that, although we're going through a tough phase in terms of how many players have left us right now, if you look at our basketball program last year, you look at a Donovan Dent, right? You look at a Nelly, you look at a Mustafa, you look at a True. All of those young men were on our team more than
multiple years,
and so although would be really hard, especially when they play really, really well, to keep them for 4 years. I think when you're able to keep them for 2-3 years, that's when you see the magic happen, and that's across all of our sports.
Agreed.
But it's a challenge for every single one of our sports. There's no doubt about it.
Agreed. Well, I will say this: we're sending our folks on to bigger and better, greener pastures, and to me, that's success.
Yeah, it is, and that's what I think you have to be. It's hard to look at it under that lens, because even for someone, who's on the younger side, that hasn't been college athletics, for 40 years, it's still hard for me, because the reason why I got into this profession was to see young men and women come through, graduate, and prepare them for life after sport. Because, and again, going back to the NFL, like that's why it was so great for me, is I saw the men that played at that level and how elite they were. And the reality is, when you look at the percentages, not many college athletes go play professionally.
Right.
And so if we're not preparing them for life after sport, that's a challenge. But if we can get them better, recruit them, retain them, develop them, and they can go make a lot of money, which a lot of our players have elsewhere, then we shouldn't be upset about that, because if that was my son, I would be proud of him. And if that was my daughter, I'd be proud of her, So absolutely. It's something that's a challenge, but it's not all bad.
Fern, final question.
Yeah.
Pitch me your career. Sell me your career. I'm a young, impressionable person. I like sports. Thinking about sports admin.
Yep. So I think,
why should I head in this direction?
Yeah, I think why you should head in this direction is because it's, in my opinion, one of the more tangible professions you can pursue, in the sense that you can do things that you can actually tangibly see and feel and touch what your work will give you, right? And you mold young men and women, right? You get in college athletics.
To the student athletes.
The student athletes, right? And I think, to me, there's just not a lot of professions out there where you can really tangibly see what you put into it. What I would say to anyone that's looking to pursue a career in athletics is work early and work often. A degree is important. There's no question. You need it. But the more experience, hands-on experience that you can get in athletics, the better it will be for you in the long run. It's such a unique profession, in the sense that I feel like jobs are so competitive. And if you have that, they are across the board. Sure. But if you have that experience that you can draw on, that you can say, hey, when I was 18, I was an equipment manager, or when I was 17, I was doing the scorecard for baseball, or whatever. Get in early and often. Okay. Because there's no substitute for actually doing the work. Yeah. And, the other thing it tells you and it teaches you early on is it right for me? Because not unlike, there are other professions that are this way, but a lot of sports early on is thankless work for very little money. Yeah. And you really, really got to be passionate about it and driven and have a desire to want to do that. And if you can make the early and lean years, it's such a rewarding profession as you continue to progress. And as I said, for me, like tomorrow, I have to go speak at our Stoll ceremony, where we've got 83 young men and women that are graduating. And that's what I mean about tangible. Yeah. I mean, gosh, how cool is that, to go stand up in front of them, and they kick butt on the fields, in the pools, on the track, but they're getting their degree and they're leaving here. And I promise you that they will be the hardest working employees wherever they go, because sports teaches you lessons that you just can't get elsewhere. And I think that's the really, really cool part about the profession. And I'm just so blessed and thankful that I had the opportunity to serve those young men and women and my team that's been so great to me since I've been here.
Wow, Fern, very well said.
Appreciate it.
Well, Fern, thank you for coming on Leaders of Enchantment.
Thanks for having me, Doug. Okay. You're the best. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Go Lobos.
Go Lobos.